Hey everybody, I'm back. So what I decided to do is give Defender for Cloud like 48 hours to bake after I enabled everything, just to see, how the numbers changed and to see whether it discovered anything new. So let's check it out and see what happened. And okay. So just jumping up to the Azure portal. And the last time we checked, we had a secure score of 61%. So our secure score went up a couple points to 63%. You can see that here. And when we last checked, we had 0 critical recommendations, 3 medium and medium recommendations, and 37 low recommendations. And you can see here that we have some changes. So our secure score went up to 63%. We have 0 critical. We have 1 new high risk recommendation. We have 4 medium risk recommendations, and we have 50 low risk recommendations. So it definitely helped to have the Defender for Cloud, take some time to scan everything, evaluate everything, and update all these scores. None of this stuff happens in real time, right? So if we go and check out our security posture, we see that, we're covering a single subscription. That's where our sandbox is deployed. And if I go into view recommendations, we can see that we have several different recommendations that we're going to want to address to improve our secure score. So the one that we're going to get the most bang for our buck on is this one on SQL databases. 4 mediums. So the agentless scanning that we enabled took a look at some of our VMs, and it's come up with some recommendations. It's found some vulnerabilities on Jump Win 1. I'm a little, 2 of the same recommendations that we saw previously for storage. One had to do with using storage account keys to access, the storage account. So we already talked about that one, and we need to mitigate that. And also a recommendation to tighten down the storage firewall to limit the virtual networks and the IP addresses that can access the storage account. So that's a pretty straightforward one, right? So again, your biggest bang for your buck will be knocking down, critical, high, and medium. Those will have a nice impact on your secure score. And the low ones, these are all good ideas to help with the secure score, but they're not considered, like, high risk, right? So these are all things that you can consider baking into your secure by design kind of process, right? And we'll, tackle some of these also in a potential future video. So for right now, okay, so let's take a look at this first medium risk recommendation on storage. Storage accounts should prevent shared key access. So if I click on that, it gives us a little bit more information, tells us what we need to do to disable it. Of course, we don't fully understand yet the implications of disabling it, but let's go have a look at the storage account. So here's my storage account, and I'm going into settings, configuration, and here's the allow storage account key access that this security recommendation is recommending that we set to disabled. So what happens if we do this? When allow storage account key access is disabled, any requests to the account that are authorized with shared key, including shared access signatures, will be denied. So clearly, you need to really understand how this storage account is getting used and how this will impact applications, because you could break applications by disabling this setting, right? Um, in my case, the only time I really use the keys is when the storage account is initially, and when the sandbox is initially getting bootstrapped, and I use it to upload scripts to a blob storage container to be used to push onto VMs. And I also use it to pull those same scripts from the storage account down to the VMs, right? So um, that happens during the bootstrap process. I have a dependency on shared keys for those types of operations. And if I disable this, that will no longer work. Now, that's fine for me because my sandbox is already built, right? Um, However, if I run into a situation where there's a policy that this has to be disabled by default, that would break the bootstrapping code for the sandbox, right? So I have work to do in terms of the design of the sandbox to see what could potentially be done to move away from using storage account key access as part of that bootstrapping process. And that's, something from an engineering perspective that I'll add to my backlog. Okay. Now, having said that, now that we're bootstrapped, I'm not going to be really using that functionality anymore. I do use the storage account for other stuff like Azure Files in the sandbox, and that does not require shared key access other than initially during the bootstrap process. We have to go in and get that Kerberos key to join it to the domain. So I don't think I'm going to break Azure Files, domain joined Azure Files by disabling this, but we'll find out. And it's a sandbox, so hey, what the heck? We'll just disable it and see what happens. All right, so I'm going to set this to disabled. And again, we got all kinds of warnings that we might break some stuff. And I will click save. All right, so we changed that setting. And the other thing that we were getting a recommendation on was for that storage account had to do with the storage account firewall. So this one we just mitigated. And again, this is not going to go away in real time because it takes Defender for Storage and Defender for Cloud some time to go out and reassess, right? So we'll go look at this one, access to storage accounts with firewall. Let's see. Access to storage accounts with firewall and virtual network configurations should be restricted. So this is basically saying, you shouldn't have this thing wide open for, access from any network or IP address. You should try to scope it down, right? So we've done that before. I've done that on the sandbox many times. It's wide open initially because I don't really know how you're going to use the sandbox. So configuring that storage account firewall is something that you would do after initially provisioning the sandbox once you understand how you're going to use storage. But we can go check this out and go ahead and make those changes to limit the networks and the IP addresses that can access it. So the setting that I want to change here is right now, I'm allowing any network to talk to my storage account, right? So what I'm going to do is shift to this setting which is enabled from selected virtual networks and IP addresses. And I'm going to go ahead and add the virtual networks associated with the sandbox, and that's VNet shared and VNet app. And I'm going to just select all the subnets in both of those VNets. So this will take all of those address ranges associated with those subnets and make it possible for them to make it through the storage firewall, right? So I'll go ahead and click enable there. Okay. And those have all been enabled using service endpoints, right? So I'll just click on add. Okay, so we're all set there. And then the other thing I'm going to do is add my client IP address. So this is for my workstation running on my home network. That's my IP address right now. The portal figured that out automatically. And, I'm going to go ahead and add that. So once I've made those two changes, I'm going to click on save and persist that. Now remember, we also already have private endpoints set up to talk to Azure Files. So those already work and were configured. So we've now gone and made some of the changes that the Defender for Storage and the Defender for Cloud technology was recommending. And what we want to do is give it some time to set in and see. Hopefully, those recommendations will be marked as mitigated, and we'll see a nice bump in our Azure Secure score. So we'll pick up where we left off when that happens.